Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Let's get into our top topic today so our friend can get to work tonight. I know he's running late, so we're going to try to get through as much of this as we can. The first thing I want to talk about, we're going to talk about good cops versus bad cops. Is it systemic? How can we fix it? How can we make it better? And why, really, I want to talk to Fubar, why he thinks there are so many veteran police officers that are getting this wrong not most of the time, but some of the time. And I mean, let's talk about the most recent action in the news, where thankfully the person in question was not injured in any way, was not killed or shot at or tasered or any of that. But however, because of the fame of this individual, it has brought this subject back to the forefront of the news. And perhaps if you're not even a sports fan, you may not have heard of this. But I'm going to show you guys a brief video. I think it's about a minute long. Of a wide receiver from the Miami Dolphins. His name is Tyreek Hill. Now, let me see if I can't figure out where this video is now. It's about a minute long that I wanted to show. And now it's not here. It's like I had this ready, and now it's not here.
Saw it.
Go on YouTube real quick and type in Tyreek Hill. It pops up about everywhere.
All right, I got it now. I think I got it.
I thought you had a link in the doc.
I do. All right, so hopefully this will do what we need it to do. Here we go. All right, guys. So I just want to show you guys this quick video of what happened, and then we can talk about the behavior of the cops, the behavior of the individual in the car, and all of that. What went wrong, what went right, etc., etc. But here is the video of the situation.
Hey, don't knock on my window like that, man.
Why don't you have your seatbelt on?
Don't knock on my window.
Why don't you have your seatbelt on?
Don't knock on my window like that, no.
Like what?
Don't knock on my window like that.
Why you have it up?
Don't knock on my window like that.
Why you have it up? I have to knock to let you know I'm here. That way you can lower it and talk to you.
Just get my ticket, bro, so I can go. I'm finna be late, gang. Do what you gotta do.
Keep it down. Hey! Keep your window down. Hey! Keep your window down.
Don't tell me what.
Keep your window down. I'm gonna get you out of the car. As a matter of fact, get out of the car.
Give me that.
Get out of the car.
Give me that. I'm gonna break that freaking window.
Get out of the car.
I'm finna get out.
Get out of the car right now. We're not playing this game. Get out.
I'm finna get out. Get out. Get out. Get out. Get out. Get out. What part of blood are you in this town? Hey, Drew. Hey, Drew. I'm getting arrested, dude. I'm getting arrested. I'm getting arrested, Drew. I'm getting out, bro. Twin.
When we tell you to do something, you do it. You understand?
I'm getting out,
You understand? Not what you want, but what we tell you.
Hold on, twin. Hold on, bro. I just had surgery on my knee. I just had surgery on my knee, bro. I just had surgery
Really,
on
what
my
a
knee,
coincidence.
bro.
I just heard you in your ears when we told you to put your window down.
Chill, bro.
All right.
The fuck?
Aisha, let me just play again because now we have the soundbite.
Don't want politics. Get out of here. All right, so that was the situation. Now I'm going to give you guys a little bit of background, and I'm going to kind of interview Fubar here a little bit on this situation. Because Fubar has, essentially that's his job. What we just saw is Fubar's job. That's what he does. He does traffic stops all day, every day. So I definitely want to get his information here, but I want to give you guys some background. This happened Sunday afternoon, or whenever the game was. I forget what day it was. Doesn't really matter. But it happened the same day that Tyreek Hill was due to play in a game. It might have been Thursday night football, actually. I don't know. It doesn't matter though. But he was on the way to the stadium and supposedly was right outside the stadium. He was speeding. Now, this is very important. He was speeding. That's why he was pulled over. He was speeding. He was doing like a 60 and a 40 or something like that. And then all of a sudden, he had all of these cops there for speeding, which is the first thing that I'm a little bit worried about. Like, there's a lot of overkill here for somebody who's supposedly just speeding, right? And the second part of that video is after they had already restrained him. It's really hard to tell, but if you watch the whole situation from beginning to end, and that video is out there as well, they have already detained him. His hands are handcuffed behind his back when they pull him to the ground, and that's when he is screaming, "I just had surgery, I just had surgery." He's already detained at that point. He's already handcuffed and all of that. So as far as the standpoint of his behavior, meaning Tyreek Hill, what do you feel like he did wrong, Fubar?
So right from the beginning, you could tell he's, I hate to say it, like a lot of celebrities, to where he wanted entitlement. And that's why he kept rolling up his window, because he said that he was trying to call his security manager for the Dolphins that said that he was going to try and get him out of whatever he did wrong. So he just made the whole situation more difficult.
So
He was acting like a date card.
I
to be
agree.
honest.
So I had problems with everything that he was doing at first. So there was a whole lot of, in my opinion, there was a lot of wrong on both sides here. But right from the beginning of the situation, I hate to say it like this, but all of us, when we're pulled over, we need to understand, all of us, regardless of what color we are or whatever, we need to understand that the people that are on the other side of that window, the ones with the weapons, are the ones that are putting their lives on the line every single day. So we need to try to make sure that whatever we do as somebody who's being pulled over is doing the right things to not pose a risk to those people. That's the very first thing. Show your hands, do what you're told, regardless of what it is. I won't say regardless of what it is, because you do have certain laws and certain rights that you have. But honestly, you know, when a cop knocks on your window, you roll your window down, you know, especially when you got tint like that, because the police officer is not going to know what's happening on the other side of that window if it's tinted like that. And that's a direct risk to the well-being of the officer, in my opinion. So when I see that situation right from the start, where Tyreek Hill is really making this seem like it's just ho-hum, give me my ticket and I'll be on my way, like, no, bro, like, you have to play the game, like, you have to do the right things, and by doing so, you keep yourself safe. So first things first, I don't always defend the officer, but at the beginning of this video, I would defend the officer, just that he didn't overreact, didn't blow out the window, and you know, because I've seen situations where they roll the window up with tint, and the police officer they have tools to just break that window immediately, so that they have visuals on the people inside the vehicle. I've seen it, right? And the officer didn't do that. So that was the first thing I noticed. Like, he didn't take that step. What do you feel, Fubar, at first? Did the police officers do anything wrong up to the point of dragging him from the vehicle?
Yeah, when they made that first contact and stuff, and, you know, he knocks on the window, and Tyreek immediately is just, "Don't knock on my window," and starts rolling it back up, you know, that's a huge officer safety. And whether it's Tyreek Hill or whoever, you know, we don't know what's inside his vehicle. So if he's rolling up that video, we don't know, or that window, we don't know what he's doing inside that vehicle, if he's concealing something, has a weapon, or anything like that. So that's a huge red flag to us. So yeah, immediately open that door and make sure he's not doing something he shouldn't be doing. And then the whole dragging out. But, you know, it just, the whole interaction from the get-go just starts off so bad, because Tyreek's not cooperative. The officer, you can tell, is amped up, you know, because the officer's just like, "Why are you not wearing your seatbelt? Why are you not wearing your seatbelt?" You know, it's just like, just identify yourself, get to the basics, and then we can proceed from there. But Tyreek wanted to roll up the window and not talk.
Well, right from the get-go, you can tell that Tyreek was very argumentative, which is already going to be a situation. And so, like you said, the officer is getting amped up. And I'm going to say, in this situation, the officer might have a reason to be a little amped up. You have some really tinted windows. And as soon as those windows go up, man, that's his livelihood, that's his life that's at stake. He doesn't know anything about this guy at this standpoint of the stop. He doesn't know what's in the car, what isn't in the car, who the person is. He has none of that information yet. So again, I can understand that amp up. Now let's fast forward to the end of the video when Tyreek is already detained. He's already in cuffs, and they're still dragging him to the ground. This is where I have problems with the officers not de-escalating the situation and making it worse. Do you feel that same way, Fubar?
Yeah, so they, I understand that they wanted him to sit on the curb and he was refusing to sit on the curb. And that's another safety issue for him, for Tyreek and for the officers, because by sitting him on the curb, then he's not more amped up to take off running on them. So I understand it, but at the same time, like, you didn't have to, grab him by the neck, force him down, because, like, I mean, I think he was playing victim a little bit. I mean, but it is very possible that he just had surgery and you could be making an injury much worse.
Yeah, I just feel like, again, I've never been a police officer, which is why I love having you here, and I want to talk about each of these cases a little bit at a time. And Kadie, please, interject if you feel like you have something to say.
Yeah, I'm taking it all in.
Okay. Again, I feel like it was just a couple of guys that perhaps were letting things go a little too far. And honestly, this could have had a far different outcome than what we got. Now, the officer in question is, I'm not going to name his name, that doesn't matter, but the officer in question is a 27-year veteran on the force. And that's where I have a real problem, because he should know better. There should be better systems in place, and I'm sure there are in certain places across the country, to prevent this exact thing from happening. And I can see definitely some of the officers' training and not, escalating this into where, Tyreek is shot or tasered or whatever that we've seen so many times over the years. So I'm glad it didn't have that outcome. But at the same time, you can still see that there's some discrepancies here between what this officer should have known and what he actually did. And that's where my concerns are here. So let me put it to you like this, Fubar. What do you feel from the standpoint of the officer? Because you can't control what the subject is going to do or say, right? You can't ever do that until you actually have control of the situation fully. And I don't imagine that's ever the case until you have them literally back at the station, right? That's when you have complete control of the situation. Or if they're in the back of your squad car, I imagine that feels probably like complete control as well. But what could the officers have done better in this situation to make it so that this wasn't a big news story the next day?
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty simple. So, you open his door and now you have complete view of him. Now, if he wants to sit there in his car and act a fool and stuff, like, give him a little bit more opportunity. I mean, just say, hey, step out of the vehicle or we're going to force you out and stuff, and explain things to him. And if you watch the whole, I think there's like 26 minutes of video body cam out there. If you watch it all, some of the other officers besides this 27-year-old veteran, because they detained some of the other
teammates,
players that
right,
come and assist, teammates that come to assist Tyreek, and they explained to him what's going on and stuff, and it's de-escalated. But this 27-year veteran that has had multiple suspensions and stuff, he was ready to rock that day. He did not want any nonsense, and he was very amped up. So it's just like, you got to learn those de-escalation, because sometimes, I mean, now if Tyreek still acts like that, yeah, sometimes you got to knock some sense into people, and show them that you're not going to mess around. But at the same time, I catch a lot of more flies with honey than I do vinegar.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And as somebody who has been stopped before, I mean, obviously, honey's always going to work better for sure. It just feels like me in this situation, and again, we're going to talk about some much different outcomes here in a minute, and much really well-known issues that have happened over the years. But it would seem to me like if any of these police officers really felt like they were not safe, then they would have backed off from the vehicle, correct? And then they would have what they call bullhorning, in which case maybe it's not called that from your standpoint, Fubar, but essentially what they would do is they would retreat back to their vehicles, they would get back behind their doors, and they would bullhorn commands at the vehicle. Essentially, roll your window down, open the car with your left hand, or open the door with your left hand. Whatever the commands are, they would bullhorn it or speakerphone it, megaphone it, whatever you want to call it, from the safety of their own vehicle. That way, they're not really up close to where they could be shot at, but that didn't happen. So when that doesn't happen, and I've seen that a million times on these body cams, when that doesn't happen, it feels to me like the police officers didn't feel threatened by this situation because they didn't retreat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, they definitely didn't feel threatened whatsoever because when they open that door and stuff and they're ripping him out, like at that point they're just looking for a fight essentially.
That's what I felt too. And again, Tyreek didn't act right. I mean, and I think he came out and even said, "Look, I could have handled this a lot better." And as somebody who's seen the video, I agree. Yeah, you could have handled this a lot better. And thank goodness something far worse didn't happen, because I've literally seen people shot and killed for doing a lot less than what Tyreek Hill did in this traffic stop. And I'd like to talk about some of those as well. Let's talk about the most famous one first. George Floyd, obviously everybody's seen that video. What could have happened differently on the George Floyd stuff, Fubar? What's your opinion on that?
The George Floyd one, very tragic incident and stuff, that he lost his life. But essentially, when I take somebody into custody, you're now my child. You're now my baby. So if I've got you in handcuffs and you're in any kind of distress or anything like that, it's on me to immediately call EMS or take care of you, render you that aid. And same thing with, I'm not going to place you face down and put my knee on you, because pushing that pressure on that diaphragm causes you to not be able to breathe very well. You got to take care of a person, whether they're on drugs, acting fool, whatever it is. You need to take care of that person, and everybody's well-being is the number one priority.
And so really it boils down to that the police officer, the peace officer, is supposed to be the neutrality part of this, right? You're supposed to be neutral no matter what. You can't be racist. You can't be political. You can't be prejudiced. You have to be the voice of reason through all of this, right?
Yeah, no matter what the situation going on or anything like that, you always want to be that level, calm person that is thinking of how can we improve and resolve this situation, and priority number one is always to save life. Mm-hmm. Life is always, life is what's most precious. So that's what you always want to take into consideration when making any decision.
Well, I feel like, again, this is a situation that we see a lot. We have one officer that's in charge. We have a bunch of other officers that are kind of taking the lead from the person who's in charge. And unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on the way you look at this, your perspective, all of these officers got charged with multiple crimes, whatever they were. We don't have to talk about the crimes and what they were charged with, what they were convicted with. We all saw the video. And somehow we all get a different perspective of the video. We all have different opinions of the video. The video is pretty damning, in my opinion, on the officer in question. Chauvin, I think was his name. And whether you believe it was manslaughter, murder, whatever, I feel like the officer was culpable, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, when somebody's going through distress like that and you're, putting your knee in their neck, back area, whatever, causing them even more stress, I mean, you're contributing to the circumstances what ultimately led to his death. So you are part of that. So whatever statute that meets that law violation of how you made him lose his life, then you should be held accountable.
So one thing I really want to talk to you about, Fubar, is the subject, right? Now, in this case, the subject is George Floyd. In the first case, it was Tyreek Hill. The subject that you're dealing with, whether you're arresting them, detaining them, or just talking to them in a regular, non-violent stop, the subject is not always going to be truthful with you. They will lie. They will do whatever they can to get out of handcuffs or resist or whatever. So as the peace officer, and you just mentioned that your detainee is your baby, it's your responsibility to make sure they're okay. Do you have to take their word for their health situation, even if you feel like they might be lying? Isn't it first and foremost the health that matters rather than anything else?
Oh yeah, 100%. Even if they're, just trying to buy themselves time or get out of getting arrested or whatever, if anybody says to me that, hey, I don't feel good or something, okay, I'm gonna be calling EMS and they're gonna come check you out. Then it's on EMS to make sure whether this person's lying or not, and it's just about time. What does it really hurt to call somebody an ambulance, have them checked out, make sure everything's kosher, just so that they don't lose their life?
That's right. That's what I was looking for because I know the training. I've never been a police officer, but I do know the training. And the training is supposed to be EMT first, arrest second, hospital first, jail second. It's always supposed to be well-being over detention. And correct me if I'm wrong on that, Fubar, but I'm pretty sure that's pretty standard, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Okay, so that's the George Floyd case. Again, you guys probably all know. I just want to give Fubar's opinions on each of these because each of these cases have unique circumstances. And then I have the biggest question, or a couple of really big questions for Fubar at the end of all this. The third one I want to talk about is, let me get there. Rayshard Brooks. Now, if you guys are not familiar with Rayshard Brooks was from Atlanta, Georgia. He was clearly intoxicated. The police were called on him because he fell asleep in his vehicle at a Wendy's parking lot in Atlanta, Georgia. Now, I'm not going to show the video here. My plans originally tonight was I was going to show each of these videos and then have Fubar commentate on them and ask him questions about them. But these videos are pretty damn graphic, and I don't really want to put that out there. But I just want to let you guys know, if you want to know what we are talking about, go search out the video for yourself. Watch the situation unfold so that way you know what we are talking about. But essentially, the order of events for this one is they approach this man who is clearly intoxicated, and they start what is called field sobriety on this man, okay? And again, field sobriety, I'm sure Fubar will agree, the different techniques for field sobriety are going to differ from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. Each place has their own way of doing things, so it's never always going to be the same walk the line or touch your nose or whatever. Each place is going to do things differently on that. But essentially what ends up happening in this situation is he starts resisting, he being Rayshard Brooks, he starts resisting, and the officer threatens him and says, don't make me tase you, don't make me tase you. And both officers, two of them, they both have their tasers out. And somehow or another, Rayshard Brooks ends up in possession of one of the officer's tasers. And then he starts to exit the scene, meaning he starts running across the parking lot. And at one point in time, you can see him move his fist back with the taser in his hand, like he's going to fire at the officer that is in pursuit, okay? And they end up shooting and killing this guy, all right? So I have a couple of questions. Have you seen the video, Fubar, that I sent you?
Yeah, I've seen the video.
Okay, so what, if anything, do you feel the officers did wrong in this situation?
It's about controlling the situation. So you got an intoxicated person. Intoxicated people can be, up, down. It's a roller coaster of emotions with intoxicated people. So just control the situation. If he starts getting aggressive, then put him in cuffs. I mean, you already have your proof that he's intoxicated. Control the situation, get him in detained, so that way he's not a threat to the public or a threat to you guys anymore. But it went sideways, and he gets one of their tasers. You can argue deadly force there. I'm kind of surprised they didn't get charged. That's just my opinion. It's a very bad deal, but...
So a little bit of background on this.
Yeah.
Rayshard Brooks was coming from his daughter's birthday party. And he was wrongfully behind the wheel of a vehicle. I think most people would agree with that. But he rightfully pulled over to sleep it off rather than continue to drive. This is conjecture, but I mean, that's what there's. This is from the official police officer report that supposedly he pulled into the Wendy's parking lot to sleep it off, quote unquote. Now, the original reports had Rayshard Brooks falling asleep while in line at the Wendy's drive-thru, which was complete bullshit, by the way. That's not how it happened. He was literally off to the side, parked in a parking spot, sleeping. And for some reason, somebody called the cops on him. And that's something I want to talk to you about later, Fubar, about the some reason somebody called the cops on him. Now, it is under my belief that short of gaining control of a situation, is it not always your goal to de-escalate as much as possible?
Yeah, it's definitely you want to de-escalate and make things go as smooth as possible. And I hate to say it, but at the end of the day, like I'm not going to chase after an OWI guy. I mean, he can no longer drive, so he's no longer a threat to me or the public. If he runs off, he runs off. He passes out in a field and sleeps it off.
Right.
Do we really need to escalate it? Yeah.
So, Fubar, you and I have not talked about this at all, right? Before this, right? I'm hearing your opinions for the first time right now on these, right?
Yep, this is my opinion.
Completely agree with what you're saying. My issue with this situation was the man was running away. He was running away. He wasn't aggressive towards the police. He was literally running away from the police, which obviously is against the law. I will be the first person to agree with that. He was resisting arrest and he was running away. My point is, again and again and again and again and again, is he was running away when he was shot and killed. He wasn't running towards them. He wasn't aggressively trying to injure a police officer. Now, you could say that he was reaching back with the taser to possibly taser the officer, who was in pursuit, by the way. And that's the problem I have. I feel like the officers being in pursuit is the opposite of de-escalating that situation. Now, a lot of people would say, the whole fuck around, find out. If you don't want to be shot by the police, then do what the police say. And I agree with you agree with those folks in most circumstances. But, when you're sleeping off, being drunk or whatever, and you're all of a sudden you've got these bright spotlights in your face and people are screaming at you, get out of the car, which is exactly what's on the body cam footage of these police were in his face, like spotlights and the whole nine. I can't imagine just going from sleeping to that, like the fear and anxiety of that. I'm not saying that's why he did what he did. We'll never know. The point I'm making is he was running away, and I agree. The cop should have been charged with something. This man was shot 3 times in the back, and that's how he died. He was shot in the back. That's my problem with that situation. Do you feel like the police should have let him go once the taser was taken from their possession?
Yeah, because at that point, then if he's running away, a taser only has a range of 30 feet. But it's not like he grabbed my gun. If he grabbed my gun, we got a whole different
You got to put him down then, absolutely.
Taser very limited. And to my conjecture on this one too, they already ID'd him and everything. They knew who he was. So if he runs off, put out arrest warrants for him and catch him later, and then you can charge him with, de-arming an officer and all those charges.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, him run away, it's not like he was somebody that had threatened to blow up a McDonald's or something like that. It was literally a drunk driving.
Yeah. And too many times these situations are for minor things. George Floyd was for passing a $20 counterfeit bill. This one was for a guy that was sleeping off a drunk at a Wendy's parking lot. And we're going to go to the fourth case here, which is Breonna Taylor. Kadie, are you familiar with the Breonna Taylor story?
Ish.
So this is about
Basic.
no knock warrants, which are complete bullshit. And I know they're illegal wherever she was killed now, but they should be illegal everywhere. That's my opinion. I'll get Fubar's opinion on that in a minute. But just the background on this story, the police in wherever they were from had a warrant, and they were allowed to serve the warrant without having to knock or identify themselves as police or anything like that. They're just allowed to go in. This was the law at the time. They're just allowed to go in, and somehow or another they were at the wrong address. Okay, and they served this warrant by essentially not knocking and going into this apartment, and Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, not knowing who was in his apartment, shot at the officers, injured one of the officers, and then they opened fire on Breonna Taylor and killed her instantly. They were at the wrong house, okay? And then, afterwards, these police officers covered it up. They took evidence from the scene. They hid evidence. All of this is public record. And unfortunately, very recently, a Supreme Court has given them, I don't know which court, that's why I said a Supreme Court, gave them immunity from this. So, first of all, I guess first question, how do you feel about no-knock warrants, Fubar?
Well, just backtracking a little bit on like the facts of it. Like
Thank
as far
you.
as I know, so they had the warrant on that address because they believed she was receiving packages because the person that they were actually looking for is a drug dealer, and they believed that it was an ex-boyfriend was receiving packages there. So they got a warrant for her house.
Okay.
No knock warrant. It's like I understand no knock warrants because when you're dealing with these gangs or cartels, hit it fast and strong and you want to get the surprise on them, but you're going to get a shootout if you're going into these possible risky places. Or like Breonna Taylor's boyfriend at the time, that was he had a permit to carry, to permit to have that gun and stuff, and somebody breaks into my house. Yeah, I'm gonna shoot first, ask questions later. I'm not gonna be like, hey, who's at my door, and wait for them to shoot me first.
Right.
So it's definitely a very tricky situation. So it's a very tragic deal, very poor planning because and it's very murky on whether the officers actually identified themselves because they did the no knock warrant, but then they planned to knock, and so supposedly they knocked and they heard them pound on the door, but then they never identified themselves, and we get this tragic shootout, and Breonna's caught in the crossfire.
And so they, to my knowledge, have never released the body cam footage from the actual event. The body cam footage I have seen starts up after Breonna is already shot and killed, and they are essentially backing Kenneth Walker up with the help of a canine. And they're having him back up towards them. That's the only body cam I could see on it. And that leads me to believe a lot of things. Number one, why are we hiding this from the public? Aside from obviously, you don't want to see her murdered or whatever, but I mean that's stuff that you can blur out or whatever. But I mean, if a cop is in the right, they're not going to try to cover something up after it's over, right? I mean that's pretty damning to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it definitely does not look good that you don't have any body cam whatsoever, or very limited body cam of the situation, because at the end of the day, the body cam will exonerate you if you're in the right.
Mm-hmm.
So if there's not body cam, it kind of looks pretty suspicious on a person when there's no body cam.
And the body cam footage they did show actually shows these officers trying to cover this shit up, too, by the way. They actually have released body cam footage of the cover-up, or part of the cover-up that they allege that was happening. Here's my opinion on this, right? You have what used to be no-knock warrants, which were legal, and then you have other laws called castle laws or home domicile laws, where you are allowed legally to defend your property if you feel like it's under attack. I don't know, I assume that's everywhere, but in the state of Texas, like, if somebody walks into my house, I can legally fire upon them without knowing who they are. I don't have to ask who you are or why you're here. So it would seem like that is in direct opposition to a no-knock warrant. It just feels like it's a recipe for failure and catastrophe.
A no-knock warrant in Texas is asking to be shot, period. I don't give a fuck what you say.
Yeah. No, that's what I mean. Like,
Like they're gonna get shot. That's just what it is. I mean, I don't understand why anyone. I mean, I get it. Like with what Fubar was saying, like in like cartels kind of thing. I get it. But as soon as you bust the fuck in and people see you, police.
yep.
That's what you say. Police.
And from what I understand, the man in question, who again Fubar rightfully said was legally carrying, he had a permit for the
Mm-hmm.
weapon that he had. He fired
Yeah.
upon the officers because he did not know who was in his house all of a sudden.
Yep.
This was done at like 2 o'clock in the morning. So, I mean, God, the same kind of situation as the guy at Wendy's. Like, all of a sudden, you've got these people in your house. In your house! You don't know who they are. Like, you have no clue who they are. You don't know if they're police because they haven't told you that they're police. And like Fubar said, it would seem pretty simple to me that if you just want to wrap this up, just show me the body cam footage of them announcing themselves as police before the man fires on them. And if you can show me that, then this case is over.
Yep.
It would seem very simple.
And that's where it got really murky too, is because they had a neighbor that sat there and went back and forth of, oh yeah, I think that the cop said something. Then they said, well, maybe not. Maybe they just knocked. I did hear loud banging, and so this neighbor really went back and forth. But then the day, to me, it's like, why do a no-knock warrant on somebody that you think's just receiving packages? This wasn't an active drug dealer or anything like this. Just somebody receiving packages and could be a mule. You know, that's not a dangerous person. Why do a no-knock warrant on this?
Yeah, it seemed like overkill right from the start. It seemed like it was destined to create this kind of havoc, to be honest. Like, it just, I don't know, man. I'm glad that it seems like no-knock warrants have gotten the scrutiny that they deserve, and hopefully they'll never be allowed to be done again. And I understand what you were saying about the justification for having them. It makes sense, but at the same time, if one innocent person dies because of a law, then that law should be changed, even if it is a benefit in certain situations. That's my opinion, though. Last one on that I wanted to talk to Fubar, and honestly, this one to me is by far the most tragic. By far the most tragic. This is Philando Castile. This happened in the state of Minnesota. And honestly, every time I hear this man's name, I honestly get emotional. That's how tragic this one was. A little bit of a background. Again, pulled over for brake lights. I'm not kidding, y'all. I'm not kidding. This man and his wife or girlfriend were pulled over because 2 of his 3 brake lights were not functioning. And he ended up in a body bag. And that's a problem for me. That is a huge problem for me. Because in this video, I'm assuming you saw it, Fubar, I sent it to you?
Yeah.
In this video, the officer, correct me if I'm wrong, the officer asks Philando Castile to give him his paperwork, essentially, which is just like every other stop you're ever going to have, registration, insurance, license, whatever. And when he reaches to get the information that the police officer asked for, the officer opens fire on this man and literally kills him. In my opinion, in cold blood. There was literally no reason for this shit to go down. Fubar,
Absolutely.
how do you feel about this situation?
So I would love to know a little bit more about the officer, because that officer, you know, he obviously had some kind of trauma in his career to where he was very, very, I don't want to say trigger happy, but like, you know, he's dealt with somebody with a gun where he's almost lost his life or something, because the way that interaction happened is he's like, hey, your brake lights, your third brake light and your other brake light's out. Can I get your license and insurance? And he's like, okay. And right away, the gentleman says, I've got a firearm on me. And he starts to reach for his license. And the officer's like, don't reach for it, don't reach for it. And then it shoots him. It's like, okay, I understand your safety there. But at the same time, like, it's just, why are you so quick to shoot a person?
Well, again, if this man wanted to hurt you with the weapon that he had, he wouldn't announce that he has a weapon. That's first of all.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I might be mishearing, but correct me if I'm wrong. In the video I saw, he knows about the weapon, meaning the officer knows about the presence of the weapon, and he still gives him the command to give me your license and registration after the weapon has already been talked about. Is that true, or am I misremembering?
No, he asked for the license first, and then that's when he starts telling him about the firearm. And then as he's going to, he says, "Just to let you know, I've got a firearm on me." And he's like, "Okay, don't reach or don't get it out or whatever." Well, uh, he must have been reaching for his wallet, and so the officer's like, "Don't reach for it, don't reach for it," and then he just starts shooting. And it's like, okay, you gotta control the situation. Again, it's so easily control the situation. Just say, "Hey, put your hands up on the steering wheel" or something. If he keeps continuing to not listen to your commands, then that's on him. But you literally gave him one command of "don't reach for it" and then shot him. And he's when you asked for it and
And I
or his
mean, if
license registration.
the video is, and honestly, this particular video is why I decided not to show the videos of all of these tonight. It's just heartbreaking.
Pretty drastic.
It is so heartbreaking
Yeah.
because it's so fast and it's so many shots. Like, this wasn't just, pop. This was pop, 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 pop. Like, he was shooting. Like, it was at least 3 or 4 shots that I heard, if not more. And his wife is screaming the whole time, "You just killed my boyfriend. You just killed my boyfriend." And they show her
And the
side of the
4-year-old was
video.
in the
And there
back
was a
seat also.
4-year-old in the back seat as well. Um,
Yeah.
Long story short, the officer that was charged in this shooting was acquitted of second-degree manslaughter. This man will not serve any time for this. Um, and I'm sorry, I just don't think that's right.
Mm-mm.
And this one is hard because, he gives the command, "don't reach for it." But, like, in that short amount of time, you give him a command to give you his license and registration, and then you
Yep.
find out about a weapon, not from your own police work, but because of the subject, is literally telling you, "I have a weapon." And, I mean, we're talking seconds here, right, Fubar? Like, from the time
Oh,
the
yeah.
first request to the time
That,
he's shooting.
I mean, literally, that happened probably in a 10-second span from when he requested his driver's license to when he announced that firearm and shot him. So it's a very, very quick situation, but it just like I don't. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And I think going back to the whole stand your ground law and stuff, I think that's a double-edged sword. Like, I want you to protect yourself and your property, but it literally in that verbiage it just says if your life is threatened or you feel that your life is threatened, and that's why this officer got off on shooting and killing this person because he felt like his life was endangered, that he was going to get shot when obviously it wasn't.
So I have a bunch of questions for you knowing these cases that we just talked about. Now, you guys will notice that all 5 of these cases that we've talked about involve a person of color as the subject. Also, the officers in question in all of these cases are all different races. We have white, we have Asian, we have Hispanic. I chose these cases for that reason because I have lots of questions for Fubar, and I trust Fubar so much because I know him from a long time. Him and I have been friends for a while now, at least 4 or 5 years. And I know a lot of the stuff that he deals with on the regular. And by and large, police work, especially when you're out on the beat, so to speak, is very time consuming, very tedious, very boring work most of the time. But it's that 5 minutes of your night when maybe it's a little chaotic and not quite so boring that can be the difference between survival and not. My first question to you, Fubar, would you ever be behind complete immunity for police officers?
You're talking about the qualified immunity
Right.
or
In other
complete
words,
immunity?
in these situations where an officer might be not in the right, I mean, essentially, immunity would say that they couldn't be charged with crimes in these cases.
And that's what you know we're all human beings, so there's always people that are doing wrong, whether it's police officer or not a police officer. So that's why, I do think that there should be some kind of qualified immunity, and that's why it goes to court and a grand jury and everybody decides on whether or not you get immunity. To have complete immunity, no way. There are bad seeds out there and stuff. So to give, the qualified immunity, I've seen a lot of cases where it goes against the officer and it goes for the officer. So I think that is a good system as of right now.
Okay, so second question I have for you, because we did talk about the Tyreek Hill situation, where the officer in question, the guy that was in charge, was a 27-year veteran who had been suspended multiple times that we know of through the mainstream media. So the question here is, law enforcement work, in my opinion, cannot be like every other kind of work on the planet, where if you make a mistake, you just get to have a weekend off or a week off with no pay and then learn from your mistake, or I say that in air quotes, learn from your mistake and just go on, because people's lives are at stake, not just your life and your fellow officers, but the babies that you say that you're in charge of once they're detained. At some point in time, like, that whole suspension thing has to stop, right? Like, these guys have to be held accountable before these things happen, right?
Definitely. I mean, when I saw the report about that 27-year veteran, now 27 years is a long time, but multiple suspensions of 20 plus days, it's like, holy cow. I've never met in my area an officer that gets suspended for that long and isn't later fired. So how does he fall through the cracks with Miami Police Department of getting suspended multiple times, numerous days like that? Those are no small incidents. It's not like, hey, we got this citizen complaint that you called him a turd or something like that. We're gonna suspend you 20 days. No, that's some serious suspension right there.
So, just for FYI sake, every single officer that was in these cases, every single one of them had at least two prior punishments or disciplinary things that happened to them during their career. None of these officers that were involved in these shootings were clean. All of them had disciplinary things on their record prior to these cases happening. That's pretty telling to me. That is pretty telling to me. As a longtime officer, Fubar, how do you? What kind of changes would you make in the training protocol for officers to ensure that they don't become what you call bad seeds?
So it's really improving here lately, and I think that some of these cases have brought it to light that we start doing this racial bias and implicit bias and de-escalation. We're doing a lot more training on that than we ever did before, but it starts at the academy because a lot of these academies, they run like military boot camp. And the military and the public is totally different. You can't sit there and just drill somebody and turn them into this robot. That's not what you want as an officer. So you need to start at the academy and change the academies. Go away with the boot camp military style, and turn it into, we're human beings and we got to treat each other like human beings.
I think there should be a lot more sensitivity training too, don't you think?
I guess, uh, you know, that's why a lot of these veterans, like that 27-year veteran, like when he got into copping, you didn't have body cams and stuff like that. They took people out back and beat them to teach them a lesson. Now we have a sensitive society and everything's on camera and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like you need to definitely treat people as human beings and treat everybody equal and treat them like, we hold people responsible for their actions. So you tell them that, hey, I'm holding you responsible. I'm arresting you because you did X, Y, and Z. I'm not going to baby you, though. You're not going to play victim on me
Mm-hmm.
and try and con me into feeling sorry for you and I'm going to give you the money out of my billfold and send you on your way when you just rob some old lady.
Right. Ultimately,
And we're
that's not
gonna
your
do
job
that.
anyway. You're the vehicle to get those people into that, to the people who have that job. No, what I mean by sensitivity training is what you were saying, just humanizing people, right? Like understanding
Yeah.
that you're dealing with another human being, and maybe circumstances or whatever have put that person into a different situation than you as an officer are in. But I feel like what I mean by a lack of sensitivity training is just the dehumanization of subjects that these police officers are dealing with. I just feel like there has to be a better way to humanize people, whether they're active criminals or not. They are still human beings, and they deserve not to go home in a body bag. And it's not your job as an officer, and I'm pretty sure you'll agree with this, to be the judge and jury for somebody. You're just the vehicle. You're the delivery person. You're the Uber, so to speak, right?
Yeah, and because like to me, I don't work in, a big like Dallas or anything like that to where you're dealing with these not so good people 24/7. To me, it's like whether you are a complete jerk to me or you're the nicest person, I'm still going to hold you accountable for your actions. So it's like I treat you how you treat me. Now, if you're a jerk to me, I'm not going to sit here and play buddy with you, but also it's like you treat how you want to be treated. We learn that in kindergarten. Just treat others how you want to be treated. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not that hard as an officer. I get that you deal with the same people over and over again and you lose your patience, and we're all human and you might lose those emotions, but that's where good qualities of an officer come in, that you have to control those emotions.
I agree. And the last situation I really want to talk about, and then I'll let you go. I know we're running late. This is really important stuff, though, and I appreciate you being here for this, Fubar, honestly. So the last thing, obviously, is the racial aspect to this. Now, the statistics show that far more white people are apprehended than colored people. This is a fact. There are more white people that are apprehended in the United States than people of color. However, the far majority of officer involved killings involve people of color. So even though white people are being arrested more, people of color are being shot more by officers. So the question for you as a career police officer, do you feel systemic racism is a problem within law enforcement in the United States?
Yeah, and that stems from society and stuff. I mean, it's that I can't remember the psychological or scientific study that talks about the study where they put a handgun in a black African American male's hand, and then in a or they show two pictures, and they always put the negative one towards the African American male. So it's like, yes, there is that. So you gotta tread lightly with that. I mean, but it boils down to me of, you just gotta treat everybody as they're human beings. I don't care what race you are, what sexuality you are. Everybody's a human being. We all want to be treated well.
And so how do we as a society make sure that the majority, not the majority, but every single officer has the same mindset that you just spoke of? Because that's not the case in this country. Not every officer has that mindset of, I'm going to treat this person the same regardless of what color they are or what orientation they are, whether I agree with their politics, whether I agree with their whatever. How do we get more officers like you?
I mean, that just comes down to where, because like here you have to go through the MMPI, which is the Minnesota multiple, what I don't even remember what it stands for, but it's a personality test. But to me, the second those red flags show up that this guy's a hothead, or those red flags show up that this person isn't working out, isn't treating people as human beings, and that's when you need to start disciplining them to either correct that behavior or put it on paper so you can end up firing them. Because to like these multiple departments, like you said, where they had multiple write-ups, and then it leads to this issue. Obviously, they probably shouldn't have been in policing.
So again, there are studies. The statistics show that the mass majority of officer-involved killings involve officers that have had disciplinary things on their record. It's like less than 10% of the time where they're a complete clean record officer that just, whatever, had a bad day or whatever you want to call it. I feel like one of the things that could possibly help with this, and Fubar can agree or disagree or not even comment if he doesn't want to, but I feel like one of the things that deters us from systemic racism within law enforcement is accountability. And again, it's almost like a good old boy system. It's just like the military where, you have cliques and you have people that get along and are going to make sure that they, that nobody gets in trouble or whatever and won't say anything if they see something. And a lot of departments, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I've never been a cop, but a lot of departments make it so that if an officer wants to make a report on another officer, the officer that's getting reported has a right to know who the name is of the person that's reporting them. And I think as long as that's a thing, I think officers are going to be afraid to hold another officer accountable because then, their career advancement could be in jeopardy. And I think that's a big portion of this is, these guys and girls are doing things that they shouldn't be doing, and others are seeing it that might be, lesser on the chain of command that won't say anything because their name will be publicized that they reported the person above them. And I think there should be a way to anonymously report another officer for bad behavior. And perhaps that accountability would become more of a thing. I don't know. What do y'all think?
Yeah, it's definitely true. Go ahead.
Oh, well, I know I've been quiet, but I've been taking it all in. I agree with everything that's been said. I haven't had any interjections or anything. I'm enjoying this. I like debates. I like
yeah, it's very enlightening for sure. What do you think about the accountability issue, Fubar?
So if you go to some of these really big departments like the New York City Police Department and some of these really big, they are very, like, they're almost a gang themselves.
I agree.
And so that's where that corruption begins, because then it's
that can happen in small towns too, where these guys have known each other for 50 years too, right? So
Yep. It's more prevalent in the big cities, but it happens in the small ones too. Of, when you're in the police work, I mean, you even see it in like fire departments and stuff. You get into this brotherhood, and nobody wants to snitch on it. You got to keep everything good. Just brush it under the rug. No, that's wrong is wrong. Right is right. Wrong is wrong. That's simple as it is. Now, they've kind of cleaned that up a little bit more of internal affairs and county attorneys and stuff. You can report them that way and stuff. So it's definitely a little bit more cleaned up, but it's still not a good, perfect system.
There's a lot of work to do for sure in this situation, and unfortunately too many people are dying of all races and all orientations, of all colors and creeds, and at the end of the day we are all human, whether you're Tyreek Hill who's late for a game and probably shouldn't be speeding, and maybe you shouldn't be rolling your tinted windows down, and but and then maybe that officer's having a bad day and doesn't want to deal with the shit today, and maybe he's missing his son's ball game or whatever it is. We all have circumstances that we're dealing with every day, and we don't know how much of those human elements are entering these situations. But the cases that I've shown today, I feel like race had a lot to do with a lot of these situations. The reason why I wanted to show it the way we did today, again, is because we had Hispanic cops. Asian cops were involved with the George Floyd thing. Hispanic cops were in the Tyreek Hill case and the Philando Castile case. You had white police officers that were part of the George Floyd stuff, the Breonna Taylor one and the Rayshard Brooks one. And so you can say systemic racism is always white versus black, and I disagree. I think it's all races. I think it's a problem that's in this country. I think that when people are brought up within not just their own traditions, but also within the training of being a police officer, I believe that we are trained or almost indoctrinated to see a certain color and then automatically make assumptions based on their race, on who and what they are. You hear the word thug a lot. you know, to describe people of color, which I think is absolutely disgusting. I think everybody has a tendency to be bad, and everybody has a tendency to be good, and it's impossible to know which you are just by seeing somebody on the surface. Nobody will know,
Yep.
and sometimes it's too late by the time you find out, and that's the scary part about being an officer. Fubar, thank you so much for being here, man. Just a killer
Thanks for having me.
idea, and I'm glad you were able to make it. And I'm going to let you go to work. I know you're an hour late, so get the hell out of here, bro.
All right. We'll see you guys.
Yeah,
Thanks
you
for
have a
having
good
me.
night, brother. Thank you so much for being on.
You too.